The Committee to Recall Sheriff Jerry Hatcher has created this video series where we break down the 8 counts of the recall for Sheriff Jerry Hatcher and explain the evidence supporting each of these counts. The third count that the courts were asked to rule on is that Sheriff Hatcher interfered in an investigation into his conduct by acting to prevent witnesses from being interviewed. And the fourth count is that he violated county anti-discrimination policy by hindering an investigation into his conduct and retaliating against the complainant and witnesses to the investigation. The event that spurred these counts was Lieutenant Magnuson's filing of a complaint with the Benton County Human Resource Department alleging harassment by Sheriff Hatcher. The full details of the incident can be found in Document 11, Exhibit C, the Blatt report on our website. The first 22 pages is the report of the investigation and is well worth the read. But for this video, we're just going to go over some of the highlights. On January 30th, 2020, Lieutenant Magnuson delivered a letter to the Benton County Human Resource Manager in which he raised allegations of harassment against Sheriff Hatcher. In the letter, he details multiple counts of when his employment was threatened for disloyalty and not performance issues, disparaging remarks about his personal religious beliefs, and threats of physical violence against his person. He also included a comment that he had information to share about criminal activity by Sheriff Hatcher. The instances of harassment began in late 2018 before Sheriff's divorce filings began. According to county policy, discrimination and harassment can include derogatory comments, intimidation, or hostility, and that discrimination is to be reported. The policy further states that any employee found to have engaged in discrimination or harassment will be subject to disciplinary action, up to and including termination of employment. The policy also prohibits any form of retaliation against the individual for making the complaint. Upon receiving Lieutenant Magnuson's complaint, the county employed the services of Druckman and Blatt, a law firm out of Portland, Oregon. The case was given to Janine Blatt, who is a well-respected investigator and who has no connections to Benton County officials or deputies. On February 24th, 2020, Ms. Blatt sent an email to the sheriff where she informed him that the complaint had been filed and that she was coming to Benton County to conduct an investigation under the scope of a resolution that was approved and accepted by the sheriff's office in 2008. She also informed the sheriff that the resolution requires that the investigation protects the confidentiality of the person who filed the complaint. The next day, Sheriff Hatcher replied to Ms. Blatt and informed her that he felt the political agendas and biases required that he have an independent elected sheriff be part of the investigation in order to protect the integrity of the office of sheriff, and that this would be the only way he would allow the investigation to take place. The big problem with the sheriff's position on this is that the independent sheriff that he wanted to take part in the investigation was his good friend, Sheriff Raymond. When the complaint is against the sheriff, having his good friend listening in to all of the questioning is a sure way to ruin the integrity of the investigation. Besides, since Ms. Blatt is independent from all Benton County politics, then the local political agendas and biases don't matter when she's interviewing witnesses. It is very disrespectful to Ms. Blatt to assume that she's unable to do her job in an unbiased manner, for if the independent sheriff really was independent, what could he do that Ms. Blatt couldn't? On March 3rd, Sheriff Hatcher met with Commanders Caughey and Law and informed them that he had received a letter from Alan Harvey, who not only represents the guild, but also the attorney for the command staff. Sheriff Hatcher then informed them that Mr. Harvey could only represent them on financial matters and nothing else. He also informed them that he was not allowing the interviews to be performed inside BCSO offices, and that those giving statements would not be allowed to do it on county time, but would have to give up their personal time for it. Commanders Caughey and Law made additional requests to be able to go on county time, as this was a work-related issue, and each time the request was denied. Sheriff Hatcher also asked who was going to be there in the investigation with them, and they informed him that their lawyer, Alan Harvey, would be present. This made Sheriff Hatcher upset, and he told his commanders that the only reason they had a lawyer was to get more money during negotiations, and that it was their duty to defend Sheriff Hatcher whenever they spoke with Mr. Harvey. He also suggested to them that if they didn't defend him, then he could demote them without cause. Sheriff Hatcher further went on to say that all of their union meetings were done, and that they needed to contact Alan Harvey and inform him that he was trespassed from BCSO. This means that if Mr. Harvey ever came into the office, he could be arrested. Sheriff Hatcher continued to make suggestions that they needed to be loyal to him and cast him in a favorable light, or he could change up the command staff. By March 19th, Commanders Caughey and Law were still unable to meet with Ms. Blatt, and they requested from Sheriff Hatcher that they be allowed to use accrued leave time to attend the scheduled appointment. Again, this request was denied, and on March 20th, Commander Law sent an email to the county HR director informing her that he and Commander Caughey wished to participate in the investigation, but that Sheriff Hatcher had hindered their ability to do so. He also indicated that they had other details they wished to share, but was going to withhold the details until they could speak with the investigator. As if this wasn't enough, on February 5th, 6 days after Lieutenant Magnuson filed the complaint, Sheriff Hatcher had called Commander Caughey into his office and questioned him about what issues Lieutenant Magnuson had with him. Commander Caughey declined to comment because he did not want to violate county policy. The sheriff continued to push and told him that he had one more chance to come clean. Commander Caughey took this as a threat to his job and informed him that Lieutenant Magnuson had filed a complaint with the county. Later that afternoon, Commander Caughey was again meeting with the sheriff about an investigation when Sheriff Hatcher again began to question him about Lieutenant Magnuson. Commander Caughey refused to comment and informed Sheriff Hatcher that he had reported to the county that he had been compelled to disclose to Sheriff Hatcher that Lieutenant Magnuson had filed a complaint. Sheriff Hatcher then went on to question Commander Law about the complaint and if anything in the complaint was criminal in nature, because if it were criminal, then he would be the one to investigate it. Commander Law refused to answer because the complaint was confidential and he was a potential witness. Sheriff Hatcher persisted in questioning Commander Law until he said it could possibly be criminal in nature, but wasn't sure. After this, Sheriff Hatcher began making comments about shaking up the command staff and about bringing in an undersheriff. Members of the command staff took this to be threats to their jobs since Sheriff Hatcher felt they were not being loyal to him. The final finding of Miss Blatt's investigation are that Sheriff Hatcher did harass and retaliate against Lieutenant Magnuson, and that he also retaliated against Commanders Law and Caughey for participating as witnesses. It was also found that he disregarded county policy requiring the protection of the confidentiality of the complainant, and that Sheriff Hatcher's behavior created an intimidating and hostile work environment. Any other county employee who prevented their subordinates from testifying in an investigation, disregarded county policy, harassed and retaliated against the whistleblower, and retaliated against witnesses would be terminated from their position. Since Sheriff Hatcher is an elected official, this recall is how that is done. These counts alone are sufficient grounds to recall the sheriff. You can find all the supporting documents for this count on our website at www.recallsheriffjerryhatcher.com. This video series was paid for by the Committee to Recall Sheriff Jerry Hatcher. Top contributors are the Washington State Fraternal Order of Police, the Benton County Deputy Sheriff's Guild, and Kathleen Werschke.